had been falling for hours. The kind that turned every streetlight into a trembling halo and every alley into a mirror of black glass. In the city of angels, the downpour never truly washed anything clean. It only rearranged the dirt, the blood, the sins. Beneath a failing neon sign that buzzed like a dying insect, Gabriel Wren walked alone, collar turned high, cigarette ember painting a small red pulse against the dark. He was thinking of Elena. Always Elena. The way she painted masks in the flicker of candlelight. The way she said that every face hid a story, and that his was a tragedy waiting for an ending. He smiled at the thought, though it hurt to do so. Somewhere in her apartment, high above these drowning streets, she would be waiting for him to come home. He'd promised her one more night, and then freedom. Promises were easy in daylight. The city whispered around him. Windows blinked like tired eyes. Sirens moaned in the distance, and for a moment he mistook them for a lament. A black shape swept across the rain-smeared sky. A crow, wings carving silence into the storm. It circled once, then vanished behind the cathedral spire. Gabriel watched it go, unease crawling beneath his skin like frost. He cut through Tiding Street, past the old rail yard where graffiti ghosts clung to the walls. A laugh drifted from the darkness, low, familiar wrong. 5 shadows unfolded from the alley, slick coats glistening. He recognized them at once. Marcus Val and his crew, once brothers in small-time hustles, now wolves wearing human smiles. Evening, Gabe, Marcus said, voice sweet as poison. Got a message from the boss. You still owe us! Gabriel steadied his breath. Tell your boss I'm done! I'm leaving this city! Marcus's grin widened. Funny, that's what Elena said. The name struck harder than any blow. Gabriel's pulse kicked. What did you do to her? Nothing. Marcus purred, stepping closer yet. The others moved in. A closing ring of rain and menace. Gabriel swung first, desperate. A flash of defiance in the dark. Fists met flesh, metal met bone, and thunder swallowed the sound. The fight was brutal and brief. They wanted him alive long enough to understand the lesson. When the knife came out, it glimmered like a sliver of moonlight. In its blade he saw not his reflection, but the crow's unblinking eye. Tell the angels we said hello, Marcus whispered, and drove the knife home. Gabriel fell, the world tilted, the rain grew colder. Somewhere above, wings beat once, slow, deliberate, as if marking the rhythm of a dying heart. The men faded into the storm, leaving him beneath the halo of the flickering sign. He lay there, half in water, half in shadow. The city's lights bled together, gold, crimson, violet, like stained glass melting. He thought of Elena's hands, of the mask she painted, of how she said each one hid a soul waiting to be seen. His last breath escaped him as a sigh, her name carried away by the rain. The crow returned, landing beside the body. It cocked its head, feathers slick and shining, and regarded him with the patience of eternity. In the glassy puddle beside Gabriel's face, the bird's reflection shivered and spoke, not in words, but in a feeling older than speech. He is not finished! The crow lifted its wings. Water and feathers rose together, a dark benediction cast upon the corpse of a man who would not rest. Far off, church bells tolled midnight, and the city of angels held its breath.
Chapter 2. The Beast They Laid.
The river beneath the old bridge was swollen with rain, its black surface pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the city lights. They dragged Gabriel Wren there, 5 silhouettes against the thunder. His blood mingled with the water before the knife was even pulled free. "Let him sink," Marcus Val said, wiping his hands on his coat. "The angels can have him now." They watched as the current took him, the body twisting once, twice, then vanishing into the undertow. A moment later, a flash of lightning lit the sky, and for an instant, a crow appeared in the glare. Circling above them like a curse, taking forward, Marcus turned away first. He did not look back. Beneath the surface, Gabriel's eyes opened. The cold was merciless. It clawed through flesh, through memory, through everything human left inside him. Sound dull to a muffled hum. Time stretched thin and silent. He reached upward, his fingers grazing the faint shimmer of the surface, but it wasn't water he felt. It was the veil between the living and the dead. And something was on the other side, waiting. Images flickered like candle flames behind his eyes. Elena, smile! Her hands stained with paint, a mask half finished, half forgotten. Then her scream! Echoing from somewhere he could not reach. While you fight it. The voice wasn't his own. It came from everywhere, the water, the air, the hollow between heartbeats. It was old, layered with echoes. I don't want to die, he thought. Then don't. Through the darkness, a glow took shape. A pale figure standing in the shallows. At first, it looked like Elena, her hair flowing like ink in the current. But when he blinked, her face dissolved into feathers, a crow now perched where she had been, its eyes burning faint gold beneath the water. They made you bleed, the voice whispered, rippling through the deep. Now bleed them in return. Gabriel tried to speak, but the water filled his lungs. He should have drowned, should have faded, but the pain did not end. It deepened, it became something else. The river turned to fire in his veins, his body convulsed, the current twisting around him like a serpent. Above, the storm raged below, a new thing began to breathe. Felt his heartbeat again. Once, then twice, slower, heavier, his veins froze, then burned his soul. Torn from his body, was thrust back in by unseen hands. And as his eyes snapped open, he saw the crow hovering just beneath the water's skin, wings spread like the crucifixion of night! Rise, Gabriel Wren. The living have debts to pay. The surface shattered. The crow burst upward with a scream that split the storm. Lightning crawled down the bridge's spine. A dark hand broke through the river, clawing at the air. Then another mud, water, blood, all spilled together as Gabriel dragged himself to the bank, gasping though he no longer needed breath. He lay there for a moment, feeling the rain on his face, hearing the echo of his pulse steady, unnatural. When he looked at his reflection in the puddle beside him, he saw eyes darker than midnight, staring back in their depths. Small shapes moved, feathers, wings, memory! He was alive but wrong, changed. A man unmade, then reforged by death itself. The crow landed beside him, shaking the water from its wings. It tilted its head and let out a single rasping caw, like laughter or warning. Gabriel stared into its gaze and whispered, "What am I?" The answer came not in sound, but in the rhythm of the rain. The beast they made. In the distance, the bells of the cathedral tolled once more. Their sound was not holy tonight. It was a countdown.
Chapter 3. Why?
The rain had stopped. The city of angels lay muted beneath a veil of steam rising from its streets. Somewhere, distant bells marked the small hours, hollow and uncertain. Beneath the bridge, where the river twisted like black glass, Gabriel Wren drifted between two worlds. He no longer breathed, yet every sense sharpened. Sound moved like light, light whispered like voices. The river carried him weightless until the current opened into stillness. A lake that wasn't truly there. Its surface reflected nothing. Even the stars refused to look down. He tried to speak, but his words became bubbles that burst soundlessly. Why, he thought, and the question burned through him. Why the pain, the return, the silence of heaven? Why the echo of Elena's voice still clinging to the corners of his mind? From the mirror black water rose a shimmer of feathers. A crow hovered above him, wings moving without wind. It was larger now, or perhaps the world had shrunk to fit inside its gaze. Its eyes were twin moons, one for life, one for death. Because you asked to stay, it said without sound. You wanted one more night, you begged the dark for time. I begged for her, Gabriel thought, not for But the images did not fade. He saw Marcus Vale and his gang laughing under flickering lights. He saw Elena alone at her easel, brush trembling, painting a mask that looked like his face. Each stroke a memory, each tear a prayer. She cries for you still, the crow whispered. She dreams of the river, but she does not know you've left it behind. Then let me go back, Gabriel pleaded. Let me warn her. You cannot warn the living. You can only change the story. He felt something cold, an immense coil around his soul. It wasn't mercy. It was purpose taking shape, bones knitting, wounds sealing. The water around him thickened like smoke. The surface above began to glow faintly, as if dawn were breaking in reverse. In that light he saw them all, the men who had taken his life, faces warped by fear, greed, hunger. He saw the places they hid, the broken church, the burned warehouse, the crooked house with boards nailed across its windows. The crow showed him every path, every sin, every place where his name had been spoken with mockery. They walk free while you lie bound, said the voice, would you forgive them? Gabriel's answer was a whisper that felt older than his own heart. No. The lake trembled, feathers fell around him, black as oil, glimmering like dying stars. The crow dipped its beak toward the water, and a ripple spread outward, slow, relentless. Where it touched him, the world changed. The cold became breath. The silence became thunder. The darkness opened like a door. Then rise, Gabriel Wren, said the crow. Let the living remember what they did. The water shattered into light. He fell through it, through time, through memory, and landed in his grave. He woke to the smell of wet earth. The night air was heavy with smoke and rain. Overhead, the moon hid behind a ragged veil of clouds. His hands pressed against the inside of the coffin lid. The wood splintered beneath the strength that was no longer human. Dirt poured around him, filling his mouth, his eyes, his lungs, yet he did not choke. He pushed upward until the soil broke like surf around him. The crow waited on the headstone, silent, patient. Gabriel climbed free, mud streaking his face, breath coming in ragged bursts. He looked at his own grave. Someone, perhaps Elena, had left a mask there, painted white and streaked with black tears. Its hollow eyes stared back at him. Why? He whispered again. The crow tilted its head. The single word came like a heartbeat in the night. Because they live.
Chapter 4, Ashes and Blood. The cemetery lay on the city's edge, half devoured by fog. Iron gates hung crooked on their hinges. Marble angels watched the ground with eyes worn smooth by rain. Beneath one of them, a new grave had opened from within.
Gabriel Wren knelt among the churned earth. His breath clouded, though no warmth left his lungs. His hands were pale, veined with faint silver scars that pulsed like veins of lightning beneath skin. Each heartbeat struck heavy and hollow, echoing against the stones.
The crow hopped along a tilted headstone, feathers gleaming wet. It watched him with quiet understanding, as if what it saw was not a man, but an old secret returned to flesh. Gabriel's clothes hung torn, caked with mud. He touched his face and found it cold. Unyielding, his reflection in a puddle showed eyes black and depthless. A stranger wearing his features! He rose unsteadily around him. The graves murmured, the wind threading through names carved in stone, whispers of forgotten lives. Somewhere in the dark, a single church bell tolled, not for prayer, but warning. He remembered Elena, painting in her small room above the pawn shop. He could see the candlelight on her hair, the unfinished mask waiting on her table. He had promised her he would leave the city of angels after tonight. They would take the train west, start again where no one knew their names. That promise now hung between worlds. He pressed his hand to the earth beside his grave. The soil was warm, faintly glowing from within. Blood and ashes mingling beneath his touch. The crow cawed once, harsh and sharp. The sound rippled through him, and the warmth became fire! Power coiled through his veins, ancient and furious. Neither mercy nor curse, but both! He staggered back, trembling images burst behind his eyes. Marcus Valley's grin, the flash of the knife, the laughter of men who thought death would keep its bargains. His fingers closed into fists, and when he opened them again, a faint shimmer of ash clung to his palms. You rise for them, whispered the crow. Its voice was a thought that brushed against his mind. Not for love, not for peace, for balance. Gabriel turned toward the city in the distance. The skyline burned with scattered lights, a constellation of sin reflected in the clouds. Each flicker seemed to pulse in time with his heart. Balance, he murmured. The word tasted of iron. The crow spread its wings and the fog parted. A path of cracked stones wound through the graveyard gates, vanishing into the glow of the streets beyond. Somewhere out there, the living who had ended him still walked unafraid. Somewhere Elena painted, unaware of what had risen to protect her. Gabriel stepped forward, the mud beneath his feet, hissed faintly, steam rising where he passed. His shadow stretched longer than it should, rippling across the ground like a thing alive. With each stride, the tremor of the earth deepened, as though the city itself felt the weight of his return. At the gate he paused behind him. The grave settled, the fog folded back into silence ahead. Neon signs flickered, opening no vacancy. Sinners, welcome the city of angels, whispered its invitation. The same whisper that had lured him to ruin. He looked once at the crow. Its eyes caught the faintest thread of light and returned it as gold. Guide me, Gabriel said quietly. shadow that moved like a ghost among their lights. Behind him, the grave he had torn open began to close, the earth folding over itself as if it had never been disturbed. Only a single feather remained on the grass, black, gleaming, and faintly warm to the touch. By morning, even that would be gone.
Chapter 5. Echoes in the Graveyard. The city never slept. Even the dead could hear its heartbeat. Gabriel walked its edges first. Back streets slick with oil, alleys breathing steam, neon signs flickering like false stars. Every step echoed against the cobblestones, and with each sound came the faint whisper of another world pressing against this one. He didn't yet know where he was going, only that something pulled him onward. A current, a scent, the memory of blood. The crow followed in silence, wings folding against the rain. Its eyes glowed faintly, mirrors of some distant fire. Sometimes it landed on a street lamp, sometimes it vanished into shadow. Yet wherever Gabriel went, it was always there first, watching, waiting, guiding. The city felt wrong to him now. He saw things others could not. The thin shimmer of souls walking close to their bodies. The dust of the forgotten clinging to doorways. The faint pulse of corruption under every electric hum. Even his own reflection had begun to slip. In windows, he saw not a man, but a silhouette of moving cinders. He passed an old cemetery wedged between a factory and a freeway. Its gates hung half open. The wind moved through the stones with the sound of whispered names. Something called him inside. The moment his boots touched the earth, the crow landed on a cracked angel's headstone and gave a cry that split the quiet. Gabriel froze. The ground beneath him trembled faintly. Not from the earth, but from memory. And then he heard them. Not voices of the living, but the echoes of those who had died in fear, whose bones still ached for justice. The graveyard was full of them, faces half seen in the mist, fingers tracing their own names carved in stone. They remember you, said the crow, though its beak did not move. They watched you die, now they sing your name. I don't want worship, Gabriel whispered. I want truth. Then listen. The air grew heavy, the fog curling into the shape of his past. He saw himself again on that bridge. The knife, the laughter, the plunge into the river. He saw Marcus Vale's cruel grin, the flash of headlights, the slow retreat of the men into the night. And then he saw something else. Elena, kneeling in the rain after they'd gone, her hands searching the water, calling his name until her voice broke. He fell to his knees, the vision cutting deep. Elena! The fog folded back into the shape of the crow. She lives, but the city feeds on her sorrow. They've made her art their shrine, her pain their pleasure. Marcus watches from his glass tower. He thinks himself untouchable.
The words stoked a fire beneath Gabriel's ribs. He could feel the chain linking every death, every betrayal, every drop of blood. It pulsed through the city like a living vein. And at its heart, the men who'd ended him. One by one, the crow said, "You will break the chain!" Gabriel rose slowly. "Show me where to start." The crow took wing, circling once before, flying east toward the older part of town, where the streets narrowed and the light grew thin. Gabriel followed, each step stronger, his purpose hardening into shape. The shadows bent toward him as he passed, drawn to his presence like moths to the dark. Before he left the graveyard, he turned once more toward the stones. The air shimmered faintly, hundreds of faint, whispering shapes watching him go. They were not mourners, they were witnesses. "Sleep," he murmured to them. "You'll have your peace soon." The wind answered, soft as breath through bones. He found the first of them near dawn. Lucas, the youngest of the men who killed him. A thief turned thug, hiding now in a half-collapsed church. A bottle his only absolution. Gabriel stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the crack-stained glass. When Lucas looked up, his bottle fell from his hands. The candlelight flickered across Gabriel's face, pale, unearthly, streaked with rain and dirt. "Wren," Lucas whispered, "you're dead." Gabriel stepped closer, the crow's wings beating once above them. Yes. The candle went out. What followed was silence. And when dawn finally reached the church's broken windows, only ashes marked the floor where Lucas had prayed. Outside, the crow circled once, then perched on the roof, its voice carried softly across the cold air. One echo answered, 9 remain.
Chapter 6. Endless Vengeance.
The city of angels had never known night like this. Rain fell in thin sheets, sliding off rooftops, pooling in the gutters, turning streets into mirrors of fire and shadow. Gabriel moved through it like a storm made flesh. The crows circling high above, eyes glinting like molten gold. Each step he took was heavier than the last, though the weight was not of earth. It was memory, pain, blood, sin. He followed the trail, the scent of betrayal clinging to the air like smoke. Each man who had ended him had left a residue, subtle but undeniable. The heat of guilt in a glance, the tremor in a heartbeat, the lingering echo of laughter that once mocked his name. Gabriel could feel it all, each pulse a tether to the life he had lost. "They breathe your sorrow," whispered the crow, and thinked themselves free. He began with Jareth, a man who once called himself a friend. The apartment was high above the street, neon dripping through the blinds like bleeding eyes. Jareth was awake, drinking alone, unaware that shadows outside the window had teeth. Gabriel's reflection appeared first in the glass. Not human, not alive. His eyes were black mirrors, the fire of vengeance roared behind them. Babe! Jareth's voice trembled, recognizing something he could not name. You're dead. Gabriel stepped through the window as if it were air. The crow landed on the sill, silent, watching, patient. The city held its breath. The encounter was brief. Jareth fell, and the echoes of his fear rolled out into the street like a wave. Gabriel did not linger. Each act of vengeance fed him, sharpened him. Each name erased from the living tighten the chain, binding him closer to the crow, to the storm, to the darkness he had become. He did not feel triumph. He did not feel satisfaction, only purpose. Endless vengeance. The crow said, "It is both your curse and your gift." By midnight, the city itself seemed to bend to him. Lights flickered when he passed, dogs howled at shadows he did not cast. Broken windows trembled as though the glass knew its maker had returned. Even the wind carried his steps, twisting alleyways into silent conduits of fear. He hunted like a force of nature, and yet, with every kill, he felt the edges of himself slip away. Gabriel Wren, the man who had loved Elena, who had dreamed of escape, was dissolving beneath the weight of what he had become. All that remained was a shell of rage, stitched together with memory and shadow. Do you feel it? Asked the crow, perched on a lamppost high above the rooftops. The man you were fades. Yes! Gabriel said, though no one could hear him. And yet I endure, and so will they. By dawn, only two remain: Marcus Val, the leader, and the one who had lured him into the river, whose face he no longer even needed to see to know. The streets were empty, the city hushed in anticipation. Rain had stopped, leaving the smell of wet asphalt and iron in the air. Gabriel stood atop a fire escape, looking down at the slumbering metropolis. The city seemed beautiful in its decay, silent, waiting, innocent in the eyes of those who had not yet sinned. Yet beneath that beauty lay rot and treachery, and it was his to purge. He lowered himself, landing like a shadow made solid, feathers of memory fluttering behind him. The crow's eyes glimmered, reflecting the first pale light of dawn. One last night, it whispered. One last strike, before the cold comes. Gabriel's lips curled faintly, not with a smile, but with inevitability. His vengeance was not finished. It could never be finished. It was endless, like the storm, like the city, like the shadow that now lived in him. And above him, the crow gave a single, sharp caw. The sound split the empty streets and carried on the wind. A warning, a herald, a promise. The living will remember the dead tonight.
Chapter 7. The Crow Knows My Name. The night had grown thick with mist, curling around street lamps and stairwells like slow smoke. Gabriel Wren moved silently. Each footstep measured, each shadow a cloak. The city seemed alive, breathing under him, exhaling whispers that only he could hear above. The crow circled, wings cutting the fog, its eyes bright with knowledge he could not yet claim as his own. He paused on a rooftop, looking down at the streets below. Neon reflected in puddles like broken constellations. And somewhere far off, laughter rang out, sharp and hollow. It belonged to Marcus Vale, still thinking he had escaped, still believing that death was a promise that could be postponed. Gabriel's fingers flexed, feeling the faint tremor of power coiling in his bones. The crow landed beside him on the metal railing, feathers wet with rain, tilting its head in a way that made him shiver. Do you remember the first night? It whispered not in sound, but in thought, in the pulse of shadow itself. The river, the betrayal, the scream that shook the city of angels. I remember, he replied. His voice was low, a rasp that seemed borrowed from the wind. I feel it all. And yet you wonder why it speaks. The crow's gaze pierced him, deeper than glass, deeper than memory. Gabriel blinked, and in that instant, he saw the city differently. Not merely streets and alleys, but veins and arteries, pulsing with sin, with fear, with the weight of every life that had been taken or broken. He realized that the crow did not just observe. It connected him to the living and the dead, to the memories and the debts. I am you, the crow said, and you are me. Every shadow you cast, every step you take, echoes in my wings. We are the same now. Gabriel swallowed, feeling a shiver that ran from his skull to his toes. This was no ordinary bird. This was a fragment of himself, or perhaps a mirror of the man he had become, the man who was no longer entirely human. Then I don't hunt alone, he said quietly. You are with me. I have always been. The realization was intoxicating and terrifying. Every strike he had made, every life he had taken, had been guided by a presence older than he could comprehend. He was not merely a avenger, he was an instrument of something vast, something older than the city itself, older than the bridges and towers, older than even the cobblestones that had once sheltered him from the rain. Below, the city murmured, and Gabriel felt the movement of unseen eyes. The men who had betrayed him were still out there, still breathing, still thinking themselves safe. Each heartbeat of theirs was a drum calling him closer. He stepped to the edge of the rooftop, looking down at the alley where Marcus Vale had promised himself sanctuary. The crow flapped its wings, and the fog shifted like water stirred by wind. Gabriel felt the pulse of the city guide him, the crow's presence thrumming in tandem with his own dark heartbeat. Your name is no longer just yours, the crow said. It is a warning. It is a prayer. It is a promise. He whispered it aloud, feeling the weight of it. Gabriel Wren. The air seemed to shiver, the fog thickening into a curtain that separated the living from the dead. In that moment, he understood fully. Wherever his name was spoken, wherever
his shadow fell! Vengeance followed, and the crow, his twin in shadow, would always watch, always wait, always guide! He moved forward, leaping from rooftop to rooftop. Shadow and bird as one, descending into the streets like an omen. The city itself seemed to bend, drawing him toward the final confrontations yet to come. Somewhere, a distant clock tower struck, and the sound carried over the rooftops, over the mist, over the entire city of angels. Gabriel Wren! Man! Revenant! Shadow! Felt the pull of the final axe settling around him like a cloak. The crow card once, sharp and clear, echoing in every alleyway, in every empty doorway. It was a name. It was a warning. It was his. They will remember you tonight. It whispered. And Gabriel did not doubt it.
Chapter 8. Halloween night. The streets of the city of angels throbbed with life. But it was a strange, hollow life. Jack-o'-lanterns flickered. Masks danced across faces and laughter rolled over cracked asphalt. Ignorant of the darkness weaving through it, Halloween had always been a night of masks, of hiding, of pretending. Tonight, Gabriel Wren walked among them, a shadow that no mask could contain. He moved silently through the crowds, invisible except to those who deserved to see him. His eyes were black mirrors, reflecting the neon glow and the fear he carried like a blade. The crow hovered above, wings outstretched, a silent herald in the fog. Somewhere ahead, Marcus Vale laughed, surrounded by the last of his crew, counting the prophets of sins he thought forgotten. They were blind to the storm about to fall. Gabriel's heartbeat was steady, unnatural. Each pulse a drum calling the night to witness. He remembered Elena, her hands stained with paint, her eyes wide with grief when she had first heard the story of his death. She was the reason he had risen, the reason his vengeance had a direction, and the reason the night itself seemed to bend toward him. The first of the remaining men was found in a deserted alley. His breath came ragged, his mask half torn. Wren, he whispered, voice trembling like candlelight, "It can't be you! You're dead!" Gabriel stepped from the shadows, the rain-slick walls reflected him. And in each pane of glass, the man saw the truth, a revenant, neither fully human nor entirely spirit. Drawn from death and ash, a being of balance and fury. "Fear me," the crow whispered in his mind. "Remember me." The man crumpled to his knees, eyes wide with recognition, when Gabriel's hand fell upon him. The world seemed to pause, the wind still, the laughter of the city dimmed, and all that remained was the pulse of inevitable justice. The alley emptied, the next confrontation waited in the warehouse district, where the shadows clung thick and the broken windows reflected 1,000 fractured lights. Marcus Vale leaned against a support beam,
flanked by his final follower. Their bravado dissolved at the sight of Gabriel standing in the doorway. The crow perched on the rusted metal above, wings dripping water, eyes glowing faint gold! You can't be alive! Marcus said, voice sharp, defiant! We killed you! Yes, Gabriel said softly, and now you'll see what death leaves behind. The warehouse seemed to contract, shadows stretching like living things. The crow's wings beat once, twice thrumming in time with his heartbeat. Each man tried to flee, but the city itself had shifted. Every exit became an echo of the past, every doorway a mirror of their sins. Marcus lunged, but Gabriel moved like smoke, unseen, unstoppable. Each strike was precise, measured, and merciless. The crow's call followed every movement, a single sharp note that split the night and carried through alleys and rooftops. And then Marcus fell, face pale, breath ragged. Gabriel bent close, black eyes reflecting the fear he had sown over the years. Tell the angels we said hello, he whispered, the same words once spoken to him by the man now lying broken. Outside, the city celebrated, oblivious to the ritual that had unfolded in the shadows. Children laughed, couples danced beneath street lights, and the fog curled around corners like a living veil. Only the crow watched, its gaze unblinking, its wings folded like a secret. Gabriel stepped into the alley, rain washing over him, and felt the weight of the night settle back into his bones. His work here was done, for now. The city exhaled, a slow sigh that carried the remnants of terror and awe. He looked up at the crow, perched silently above. Its golden eyes seemed to shine with approval. It is done for tonight. Gabriel nodded for the first time since his rebirth. He felt the faint stirrings of something he had thought lost. Relief, not peace, not joy, but relief. His vengeance had run its course through the city's veins, leaving whispers and shadows in its wake. The crow took flight, circling once above him before vanishing into the mist. Gabriel stood in the alley, rain-soaked and silent, listening to the distant echo of laughter, of music, of life. The city of angels remained, imperfect and unforgiving, yet somehow waiting for him, for the shadows, for the night when vengeance would rise again. And somewhere in a room high above the street, Elena painted a candle flickered, and the mask she worked on caught the light. She would never know fully what had passed, yet in her heart she would feel the echo of a presence that watched, protected, and remembered. Gabriel turned away. Slipping into the shadows, the crow had gone, but its whisper lingered. We will meet again. The city exhaled! The fog thickened, and honey saw!
Chapter 9. Dawn comes cold.
Dawn broke slowly over the city of angels, pale and thin. As if the sun itself feared to touch the streets where shadow lingered, Gabriel Wren walked among the empty alleys, silent except for the faint echo of his own heartbeat. The city had returned to its waking rhythm. Streetcars groaned along tracks. Shopkeepers raised shutters, and children stirred behind curtains. But beneath it all, something unquiet remained. He felt it in every brick, every puddle, every faint whisper of wind. The memory of what had been done, the remnants of fear, the residue of lives shattered and corrected. The hunt was over, yet he carried it still, as one carries a weight that cannot be set down. The crow perched on a streetlight above, wings folded, watching its golden eyes caught the first glimmer of sun, reflecting it back in shards that seemed like tiny warnings. Gabriel walked toward the cemetery at the edge of the city, where rain had left the grass glistening like green glass. His grave awaited him, half filled by the night's digging, a hollow shaped by death and rebirth. He knelt beside it, hands brushing the damp earth. The soil smelled of ash, of rain, and of something older, memory. The city sleeps, for now the crow whispered, but it will never forget you. He pressed his fingers into the ground and remembered Elena, the way she had painted masks, the way she had cried over the river, the way her voice had carried over the storm. He had risen for her, fought for her, but she would never know the shape he had taken, the lengths he had walked between life and death. She would never know the cost! Gabriel leaned against the cold stone of the headstone, eyes closing briefly, his pulse, unnatural as it was, slowed, matching the soft rhythm of the city around him. He thought of the men who had wronged him, their names now written not just in stone but in shadow and memory. He had delivered the balance. They would haunt no one else. The wind stirred the graveyard fog, curling around tombstones like smoke from a dying fire. Shadow shifted, the whispers of the dead threading through the grass and headstones, murmuring approval, perhaps awe, perhaps envy. He felt their eyes on him, their silent judgment or recognition. Rest, Gabriel Wren. The crow said softly, "You have earned the night's end." He nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement, of resignation, of promise. The rain returned briefly, cold and light, washing his face, dripping down his hair, mingling with the mud on his hands. For a moment, he let himself remember what it had felt like to be human, to be mortal, to be loved. He rose, stepping back from the grave. The crow followed, circling once before, perching on the stone. Gabriel placed his hand on its slick feathers, feeling the bond, the weight of what had been given to him, and what he had become! We wait! The bird whispered! Gabriel's eyes, dark and deep, reflected the coming light of morning. He turned away from the cemetery gates, the city stretching before him, alive and breathing. His vengeance had ended tonight, but it was not final. There would be another night, another storm, another reckoning! He walked walked slowly through the empty streets, leaving behind the cemetery that had given him death and rebirth. Every step was measured, deliberate. Every shadow seemed to lean toward him, recognizing the shape of a revenant who would not truly rest. The crow took to the sky above, wings beating against the pale light. Gabriel watched it go, knowing it would return when the city called again, when the sins of the living demanded repayment. And so he returned to the earth, to the hollow of his grave, beneath the stone, carved with a single line.
Here sleeps vengeance in shadow.
The morning wind stirred leaves across the cemetery paths. The city of angels awoke, unknowing, unaware of the shadow that had walked among them, leaving its mark on stone, on soul, and on memory. Gabriel Wren waited, patient, eternal, for the next Halloween night.
Chapter 10. Vengeance in Shadow. The city of angels slept under a thin shroud of fog. The rain had long since ended, but the streets still glistened, holding the reflection of every light like a secret. The storm had passed, and yet something still lingered, a tremor in the air, a whisper in the stone. The city had been touched by death, and though its people did not know it, they carried that mark in their dreams. Beneath the old cemetery, Gabriel Wren lay in his grave. The soil pressed down softly, heavy but not suffocating, almost tender. The earth had come to know him, to hold him gently between breaths of the living and sighs of the dead. The crow perched upon his headstone, feathers black as the void, eyes bright as small suns. The dawn above was colorless. The city's towers cut through the mist like tombstones of glass and steel. Somewhere far away, a church bell tolled, its sound fractured by distance. The first morning after Halloween was always quieter than any other day. It is finished. The crow whispered its voice, the echo of the grave itself. For now. Gabriel stirred beneath the soil. His fingers flexed once, brushing the cold earth, then stilled. The memories of the night drifted through him. Marcus Val's final breath, the flicker of neon in the rain, Elena's candle burning faintly in her room, the sound of laughter turning to silence. He had fulfilled the vow that death itself had written into his bones. The living had learned to fear the dark again. And yet, deep inside, there was no peace. Only stillness. The kind of stillness that waits, that listens, that remembers. Above, the crow shifted its wings. Droplets of dew falling from its feathers. They will forget, it murmured, almost with sorrow. They always forget, they will sin again. The city will bleed again. Gabriel's eyes opened beneath the soil. The blackness above him was endless. And yet, he could see, not with sight, but with knowing, the city of angels would never change. Its beauty and corruption were two faces of the same coin, and the coin always landed the same way. He accepted it. That was the nature of his curse. That was the truth of vengeance. He remembered Elena, the way she had painted his mask. Her fingers trembling, her tears staining the canvas. Somewhere she still lived, broken but whole enough to dream. In her dreams she would see him walking the streets under the crow's wing. And though she would wake with tears in her eyes, she would not be afraid. She would understand. For love and vengeance were born of the same shadow. The earth above his chest trembled as he breathed once, not as a man, but as something older, something endless. The air moved through the graveyard, stirring the fog into slow spirals. The crow took flight, wings carving through the silence, rising into the gray light of morning. It circled once above the cemetery, then over the city, its cry carrying across rooftops and alleys, through open windows and sleeping hearts. Some woke, shivering, feeling an unnamed presence watching, remembering the whisper of a name they had never known but somehow feared. Gabriel Wren. The city whispered it in its sleep. The rivers murmured it beneath their bridges. Even the rain remembered it, each drop like a heartbeat returning to the ground. Beneath it all, the man in shadow waited, his soul coiled in silence. The echo of his heartbeat faint but steady, a drum in the distance, a promise not yet broken. When the next October wind would rise, when the fog would once again spill over the city of angels and the night of masks would return, he would rise again. The crow would call his name and the world would tremble at the sound. Vengeance never dies, it only sleeps. And in that sleep, the city rested uneasily. Above the city of angels, the crow flew east into the fading dawn. Its wings shimmered with light, the air beneath them trembling with every beat below. Shadows stretched long and deep, curling around the streets like memories that refuse to fade. Vengeance and shadow, the crow knows.
Epilogue. 1 year later. The city of angels had grown quieter over the year. The streets, once jagged with crime and neon, now slept under the watch of a pale autumn sun. But beneath the calm, old shadows festered. New gangs had risen, carving their own sins into alleyways and warehouses. Unaware that the city had already paid the price once, and that the ledger was never truly closed. High above the street, a lone crow circled, its wings catching the amber glow of the early evening. Its golden eyes scanned the city like a clock, patient and eternal somewhere. Deep in the heart of the city, a name waited to be spoken. Elena moved through the quiet streets, clutching a small canvas bag to her chest. She had avoided the cemetery for months, drawn instead to her paintings, to the fragile solace of daylight. But tonight was different. She had seen it again in her dreams. A vision of Gabriel's grave, a single mask hanging upon the headstone, black streaks and white tears etched into it, as if waiting for her hands to place it there. The wind
burden shifted as she climbed the familiar path, and the fog rolled back like old velvet. Her breath came in small, uneven gasps, each step echoing on the cracked stones. She reached the gate and paused, eyes fixed on the weathered gravestone she had visited countless times. But tonight, it was alive in a way she had never felt. The mask from her dream rested against the stone as if waiting, though she had never brought it here. Her hands trembled, she lifted it, feeling the rough brush strokes beneath her fingers, the faint smell of paint and memory. A scream tore from her throat! Gabriel Wren! The name rolled across the cemetery, echoing against the marble, bouncing from tombstone to tombstone. The city seemed to hold its breath. The crow tilted its head at the sound, wings outstretched, eyes glowing faint gold. From beneath the earth, from the shadow between life and death, Gabriel stirred, his heartbeat faint and deliberate, threaded through the soil like a drum in the dark. The crow cawed once, sharp, commanding, alive, and Gabriel rose, pulled from the grave not by vengeance this time, but by love. By the call of the one who had always anchored him to the living world. He stepped onto the grass, mud and shadows clinging to him, and looked down at Elena. Her eyes were wide, tears streaming, the mask held between her hands like a fragile talisman. She had come seeking nothing, yet her scream had summoned everything. Gabriel's lips parted, but no words came instead. He let the silence speak, let the weight of the year, the city, the river, and the rain roll across them. It begins again. The crow whispered, circling above them. The city will bleed anew. Beyond the cemetery gates, lights flickered in the streets, the sound of a new gang's laughter echoing through alleys, marking territory, carving fear into the innocent and guilty alike. The city of angels had not forgotten, and neither had Gabriel. Elena knelt and gently placed the mask on the gravestone, a quiet offering and a promise. Her fingers lingered on its surface, as though her touch could bridge the shadow that separated them. Gabriel watched, heart tethered to hers across the divide of life and death, a tether that no knife, river, or time could sever. Circled one final time before vanishing into the growing darkness, leaving the cemetery silent but alive, charged with the memory of what had passed and the promise of what was to come. Gabriel raised his gaze to the city beyond the gates, the wind carrying faint echoes of laughter, neon and sin. His shadow stretched long across the grave. The fog. He would wait. He would watch. And when the time came, the city of angels would learn that vengeance sleeps only to awaken stronger. Elena stood, stepping back, leaving the mask behind, tears glinting in the moonlight. And though she did not see him, she could feel it, the pulse of his presence, the weight of his promise, and the knowledge that he would rise again when the city calls. vengeance never dies. It only waits! The fog swallowed the cemetery once more, and the city of angels exhaled beneath the rising night. Gabriel Wren returned to shadow eternal, patient and unbroken! A storm waiting for the next scream!